Someone once asked. Someone sent me like a picture. Someone sent a picture like, ask your children what the connection between a pencil and a tape is, and a cassette is. So, do you know what's the connection? Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Like what? Anyway, so the Chafetz Chaim famously said when the, what do you call it? Phonograph came out, whatever that is. That you know, I don't know if this is the reason that the Rebbe should put on the world. There's something we can learn from it. The Mishnah tells us that a person has to know that there's a constant state of ayin roya. There's always an eye looking. Kaviyachal Rebbeinu Shalom is looking at us. Good evening. Eyes and shemas, and an ear that hears. And all of your actions are b'sefer nechtav. Have a seat. Make yourself at home. You know, you learn this the hard way when it comes to all these. You hear all these stories about this. When this video came out about this person and this one after this and so that, and you know it's all the Rebbe sees it all. So we're on video. You got to be, yeah. He uses the replay all the time. Constant replay. Doesn't need replay. It's constant. Anyways, okay. So we're going to talk tonight a bit about a subject that, to my humble opinion, is applicable to every one of us, possibly on a daily basis. I would say generally weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. It happens often. And I think that many people are not aware of this and therefore are not careful enough to refrain from holding back with something which is as simple as this, yet as challenging as this. What does that mean? Here it goes. The Torah tells us, Lifnei Yiver Leisitein Michsho. In front of a blind person, you may not place a stone or stumbling block in front of a blind person. Okay? So, let me ask you. If I were to ask you, take opinion, let's start like this, by a raise of hands. Would you think it's prohibited to place a stumbling block in front of a blind person, according to this verse in the Torah? Yeah, right? Okay. The vast majority of Rishonim, those are the first commentators after, well, not the first exactly, but close to the Talmud, I guess close enough, around 1,000 years ago. The vast majority of them hold, Maimonides, the Ravid, the Chinuch himself, the Ravid said, we said the Ravid, the Shulchan said clearly, others also, so the Advaz maybe, they all say that this is not included in this pasuk. What does that mean? Why not? Okay, we'll get there, but 1 minute. There is, however, another prohibition that one may not do this. First of all, we're commanded to love our fellow Jew like we love ourselves, and therefore a person obviously would never want to stumble and trip and fall over, so that's of course included in this. But regarding this actual prohibition of not placing a stumbling block, shockingly so, it is not included in this prohibition, the actual placing a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Now why not? Why not is the $1 million question. We're going to get there. I want to address a different point, 2 different points. First of all, what isn't included? It's not that, so what? Yeah. So the Mefarshim tell us, Rishonim tell us 2 things it's including, okay? Thing 1, that a person may not give someone, another Jew, possibly a guy also, we're not going to discuss that aspect of it, but someone comes to ask you for advice, and you believe that proper advice giving him would be one way, and you tell him another way, that's called Eitzah She'eino Hoganesloi. It's a piece of advice that's not really good for him. One is transgressing this prohibition of Lifnei Iver Leisitein Michsho, which means in front of a blind person you don't place a stumbling block, because really he's blind, he doesn't realize what he should be doing. Okay? And you're telling him to do something that he doesn't know what he's doing. For example, I'll tell you a story. I saw a story today with Rabbi Diskin. Rabbi Diskin was the Rav of Brisk. I'm familiar with the town of Brisk in Europe. And then he went over to Yerushalayim. He was the Rav of Jerusalem afterwards. He was a holy person known as an angel, as a spectacular human being, brilliant human being. To give you a picture of who B'Shulei was, someone once came to him at the end of his life. He was an old man, and he brought him a letter. Actually, it's a similar piece of advice, same thing. And B'Shulei took one. He asked him. I don't remember exactly the topic that he was asking him, but he asked him for advice. And he gave him the letter. B'Shulei glanced at it, and gave back, and told him, "Do this, whatever, do X." So he was starting at B'Shulei. He left, comes back. And he gets home, and I don't know if he told his wife or things nice, This is, I don't know what it was, but it was a matter of great importance to him. And Shulei Kam looked at the letter, and I'm going to rely on his advice. What's up, back? Well, Shulei was a scary person. He didn't start up with him. He went back. Mustered up the courage. He goes back to Shulei and he says, listen, Rabbi, just tell me, did you read? He gave him the letter again. He said, I already told you what to do. He says, okay, strike one. So he says, did the Rav read the letter? He said, did I read the letter? I can tell you how many words there are in this letter. I think he said 110, if I don't remember exactly. And the guy, he tiptoed out and went home and counted the letters and of course, Rabbi Shulei was right. So that's who Rabbi Shulei was. They say in Rabbi Shulei, they could look at a tree, tell you how many leaves are on the tree. That's what they said about him. Anyways, so this Rabbi Shulei, there was once a sheikhet in town, a person who slaughtered the animals in town, that was doing things, whatever he did. He did things that they didn't like. So Rabbi Shulei told them that they should demote him from his shechita job. It doesn't pass that someone that is doing these things should be the sheikhet. Okay? So they told Rabbi Shulei, so what should we do? We should just get rid of him. He said, no, you can't leave a yid without parnas. You can't leave a fellow Jew without a livelihood. This is livelihood. What should we do? Get him another job. Get him a job. And fine. Anyway, so fine, they come to him. They think of another job. Fine, they worked it out. They come to him. Finally, they said, listen, Hezekiah, we have a great job for you. Great job offer. You're now the sheikhet. Have a better job if you don't have to get all bloody. You don't have to get work all day and night. You're smelly. Okay, good job, clean job. You'll be I don't know. Barber. Good. Barber. Yeah, barber. Yeah. Keep the razor out of the neck, not in the neck, A barber. So he says, I don't know. I'm used to being a sheikhet. My whole life I'm a sheikhet. So he says, you know what? I'm going to go ask Rabbi Shulei what to do. So, okay. So they're all happy. Rabbi Shulei was the one that set this whole thing up. So he comes to Rabbi Shulei. And he asks Rabbi Shulei, listen, Rabbi, this is the story. I'm right now the sheikhet. And they come to me, they offer me to be the barber. What should I do? Should I stay a sheikhet? Rabbi Shulei says, the truth is, you're a sheikhet for a lot of years. It's a good parnasa, respectable job. You're getting mitzvahs, you're making brachas. I think you should stay being a sheikhet. Said he come, it's fine. He goes back. He says, listen, I can't decide such a thing on my own. I went to Shulei. We told me to stay a sheikhet. I said, what's going on over here? You told us to get rid of him. We played a whole shtick. We killed ourselves. We got him a job. And you're telling him not to take the job? This is what he said. The Torah says, someone asks you for advice. You have to say what's best for him. It's best for him to be a sheikhet. What should I say? For you have to figure out a way that he's going to take it without asking me. Or get him a better job that's better for him than being a sheikhet. That's what it means to properly understand and appreciate what the Torah says. That's what it means to properly understand and see that when you have to give advice, give proper advice. Now I want to ask you guys a question. Yeah, let me ask you a question. There's actually another translation of this. Before we get to the other translation, another question. Let's say, for example, you have a lawyer. You have a lawyer, you want to invest in real estate in Georgia, all right? You don't know Georgia. So someone calls you up, you say, listen, I have a great deal. Apartment building, right now there's 50 apartments in the building, and it's selling for $5 million. I'm telling you, I know the neighborhood. You buy this building at $5 million. You redo the apartments. You put in $1 million into the apartments. 3 years, you sell it for $10, $15 million. You'd be good to go, no problem. Sounds like a good deal. Everyone has $5 million in their bank account. No problem. Take the checkbook. I don't want to do it without any whatever. So what do? You pick up the phone and you call your friend that lives in Hudson Clutch, Georgia, and you say, listen, who's the guy? Who's the guy in town to talk to about real estate? I don't know if this guy's pulling my leg. I don't know anything about Georgia. I don't know, maybe it's worth $2 million. I don't know what's going on. Sounds like a great investment. He has all the details, all the information, everything around. Tells you there's a famous lawyer in Georgia. He's the guy. He knows all the real estate. He's the real estate lawyer in town. You call him up, tell him the story. He'll charge you a nice hefty sum, $1,500 for an hour, whatever it is. He'll charge you the money, but it's worth it. You're going to make $10 million, and it's worth it. You put the investment, it's worth it. You hold him up putting $5 million on the line. Call him up. It's cost you $1,500 worth it. So fine. Say you pick up the phone. Hello, Mr. Whatever. I would like to, Mr. Katz. I'd like to discuss with you. He sets his clock. Okay. I'm just telling you all the fees. Fine. Fine. He calls him up. Okay. We set up a meeting. They came down. He meets with him. Fine. Comes into. Let's say he goes down to meet with him. He comes into his office. The guy starts the clock. Then he goes to the office. Fine. And the dollar bills are clanging up. And like by the gas station. Anyways, he starts asking, there's this thing. Where's this property? This property's on Henderson Street, okay? And, that building, okay, very good. Yeah, it's a nice neighborhood. Okay, so what do they want to do? This is the whole plan. Sounds like a nice plan. And what's your question? He says, I want to know if you know the neighbor. I don't know the neighbor. I'm from Pennsylvania. I don't know anything about Georgia. Do you think I should do it? He says, thank you. You should know that the neighborhood is not really that great. There's down the block, there's a CVS that once had trouble, and then this had trouble, and there's people that are bandits, and they're this and that. I don't know how smart it is, and there's no fire insurance policy on the building now. Let's say it burns down tomorrow. What do you know? All the luxury that he comes up with. And by the end of the conversation, the guy's convinced out of it. He flies back to Pennsylvania. He says, "Listen, I saved myself a bad deal, and thank you very much." And he calls his friend. He says, "Listen, I called this Mr. Katz, and he's such a nice guy. I paid him $1,500, but it was worth it. I could have lost $5 million. Right? 2 months later, he meets the broker, and he tells the broker, whatever happened with that piece of property? The guy says, Mr. Katz bought it. Mr. Katz bought it. Mr. Katz? He's the guy that, I don't know. He called me up the next day, and he said, I heard you trying to sell a piece of property. I'd like to buy it. So he calls, this guy's livid, and he calls Mr. Katz and says, listen, how do you, first he doesn't pick up the phone, and he finally gets through to him. And he says, hey, I wasn't sure if it was for you. He starts with the excuses. He hangs up the phone. Huh? He knows exactly. He starts showing a credit card. So I want to ask you, what do you say about such a person, Mr. Katz? He's okay. He's not. On the one hand, you got to provide for his family. Making $1,000 an hour is not enough. He has to make enough, to his family. On the other hand, this guy asked him advice. He charged him for the advice. Right or wrong, good or bad? What do you think? Ganef, good. I would be livid. I'd be livid. It's something which is infuriating that someone not only does he not give me proper advice, he goes ahead and rips off my thing. He's trying to gain my investment. That is a typical example of a neighbor. Now, once we understand this clearly when Mr. Katz is the one that's going ahead and going to gain on the deal. But let's say someone just comes over to you and asks you for advice, and for someone, you think that he could do it. I don't know. Why should I tell him? I don't have any personal negias necessarily. I don't necessarily want him to do that. But why should I tell him the proper advice? The Torah sees that the same exact thing. Why? Because when someone's coming to ask you advice, he's relying on you. A person, you have to care about your fellow Jew. You are obligated to worry about them, to care about them, care about their finances. The Torah says if you see someone's losing money, etc., you have to help him. A person is obligated to help. You have to help your fellow Jew, and you can't just let things go to the wayside. And therefore, when someone comes to ask you advice, you have to give them the proper advice.
Are you allowed to say, I don't know?
Yes, absolutely. Sure. And a person could certainly say, listen, I want you to know something. I'm looking at the same investment. I don't want to give you advice. Or you say, listen.
He means that he knows what the good eitzah is,
yeah,
but he doesn't want to say.
You don't have to, as long as you're not giving advice. Okay. You're not giving your advice. As long as you're not giving advice. Because the person can say, I'm negeh b'davar. Very, very often, to me, these things happen very often. Some guy asks you advice, it's negeh to me in some way.
That's giving the excuse, but if...
I have negis. I'm not an independent opinion giver. You're talking about today's political society, draining the swamp and getting rid of the lobbyists. To put in the people that are trying to lobby for their whatever it is company, whatever they're doing, and think that it's going to work. It's not going to work, right? Your person's negeh b'davar. It's going to affect you somehow. So you can't think straight. You don't think straight. So that's what the Torah is telling you. You have to be able to think straight and give the person the proper advice, like Rabbi Shmuel did. And very often, and a person can say to himself, listen, I stand to lose on this. Because if he's not going to take this piece of property, I'm going to buy it, and then I can't stand to gain money. But the Torah says that if you shouldn't do it, and you're listening, Hashem will take care of you. Obviously, this wasn't for you. So, and this is, I would say, fairly more common than we would expect and we would think about. Every simple question someone comes to ask you, I know someone now that was dealing with a therapist in some parsha or whatever, and he thought that the therapist was too much for him, like it was already stale, and he asked the therapist, should I go get a new therapist? Now I don't know what the therapist said. I don't know what he responded. I actually asked him, maybe it's time to think about getting a therapist, as I told this person, and he said to me, I actually asked the therapist that question. Now, if I was the therapist, I would be very scared to answer that question because you're in a negeh b'davar. Obviously, you want to keep the client, even if you don't need the client you're full. Still, it's a little bit of a patch, so to speak, to lose a client. I'm going to go to the next guy, right? So it's dangerous to give advice. But Lamaisa guy asking advice. What a person probably should do is say, listen, you can see I'm going to give it over. I'm not independent. Go ask someone else. How could I answer the question? I can't answer the question. It's a very hard thing to do because you're Mr. Know-it-all if you're a therapist, But Lamaisa, and these things come up, I'm sure, all the time. All the time. Someone has an insurance agency. You call the guy. Listen, I get another policy. Should I go with you? Should I go with that guy? And say, well, it's all about service. It's that. Lamaisa between me and you, what's better? It's better to get a cheaper policy, right? So all these things come up all the time. We have to be very careful with this. So that's halacha number one. Lifnei. That's the basic halacha that talks about lifnei is not giving someone bad advice. That's number one. Number two is also very, very negeh. It's a little less negeh, but it's very negeh, which is allowing or helping or aiding or abetting someone to sin. Now, what does that mean? For example, let's say someone there's actually a discussion. Let's say you come into shul and you're going to give out food, right? There's someone in shul that's not going to make a bracha on the food. He's for sure not going to make a bracha. He's not honest, whatever the case is. He doesn't make brachas. Whatever the reason, he's lax about it. He's not worried about it. Okay, I'm making a bracha, fine. Are you allowed to bring the food? Very questionable. Very possibly not allowed to. I had this question. I get a different question. It would seem to come out. I'm not a paisik. You got to ask your LOR, as you always say. But it would seem to come out that on pizza, a person's obligated to wash. Yeah. So I made a seam recently, and I brought it into a certain place, wherever it was, and I brought in 3 pies of pizza, whatever it was, and people didn't wash. Some people washed, and people didn't. So the way I see the sugya, I'm not a paisik, but the way I see it, there's no explanation why a person that eats lunch 2 slices of pizza would not wash. There's no explanation of the halacha that you cannot wash. If you have someone that says you can't, fine. So I had a question, am I allowed to bring pizza I want to make a scene. Am I allowed to bring pizza to these people if they may not wash? That's the same question. You can cause someone to sin, unless they have what to rely on. If they have what to rely on. So just because you think not, that's fine. That's not sinning. But if someone's doing something, and it's fairly common probably, to help someone. This is a big question. Have people over for Shabbos if they're going to drive. All these type of questions are in the year for this. Actually, once called Rabbi Trevitsky. Someone called me up, to call Rabbi Trevitsky asking this question. I asked him this question, but it's very, very negeh. It comes up all the time. To do something. Negeh. I'm sorry. Negeh means.
That's why I can tell in the context.
Like you're an involved party. Like there is.
You have an ulterior motive to.
Could have an ulterior motive, it's not.
It affects you. It affects you. Negeh means it affects you in some way. Yeah. It affects you in some way. So right. You can't be impartial. Right. Anytime you're negeh literally means relevant, involved. That's really what it means. So you're somehow involved in the picture over here. So it's hard for you to think straight, hard for you to think. And even though people think you could think straight, but very honest. Well, thing you see sometimes you talk to a person, and they'll talk sense and they'll think straight, but you see that something's wrong, and they think they're right, and they think but they're wrong, and they're good, honest, great, smart, intelligent people. But when it comes to a person, you don't see. You just don't see. I missed that. What was that? We're not gonna. So that's the second idea. So the first idea was not to give someone a bad advice. The second idea is not to give someone an ability to sin. Another example would be if you're going out for a business meeting. I just had this. A friend of mine took a non-from yid at the business meeting. They went to Hudson Klutz, Kentucky. There was no from restaurants, no kosher restaurants around. And this guy lives in Kentucky. And the normal thing is take a person out to a restaurant. You're not going to eat because you don't eat non-kosher, so you're not going to eat in the restaurant. I'm not sure if you're allowed to go into the restaurant. Maybe you may not be allowed to go into there and eat and even drink there. But let's just forget about that for a second. Are you allowed to invite you want to pay for the food? This person is let's order lunch to the office. You're allowed to pay for it. You're allowed to order food from a tray for place. I'm not going to eat, but he's going to eat. Again, you shouldn't be allowed to do it because there's one thought process. Maybe if he's going to eat anyways, tray. Then you have to know. But it's certainly not simple that you're allowed to do any of these things. And these type, use your imagination. Think of any of these type of examples that may come up. Okay, so that's idea number 2. Now, why in heaven's name should placing a stumbling block in front of a blind person not be included in the prohibition of placing a stumbling block in front of a blind person? Why not? What's going on over here? Everywhere you look, it's and you look through this Svarim, and not many people discuss it. I mean, it's discussed. The Maral talks about it, and the Kliyaka talks about it, and I saw other people. It's not a major question, and I don't know why. I don't know why.
Take it at face value.
That's the question. You should be able to take it.
And the bottom line is, if you really want to say what is it saying, that you really should never take advantage of another human being.
Right. But not even
using that as the analogy.
Well, let's say you're not even thinking about it. Let's say you're not trying to take advantage. Let's say for argument's sake, you're shoveling the snow off your car, and they should plow the streets. But Lamaisa, you're throwing a thing of snow into the street. You could trip the next guy that's coming down the street. You can't see. It's black ice and it melts overnight and whatever. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to not shovel your. I'm not saying not shoveling your snow is called the fneiver. I'm just giving examples that are practical examples. Different things that you're not trying to be malicious. You're not trying to hurt the person, but you're placing a stumbling block in front of someone. You're doing things that are.
Fastest way to center city. Should I take 95 or go down the boulevard? And the construction on 95 is like whatever. You take 95. It's an interstate. It's got a lot of lights on one. And the story. You know it's going to take them 3 times as well. And you tell them to go that way anyway.
Waze is constantly every neighbor. Yeah, but we're talking about what about a stumbling block? Are you allowed to? I mean, you're obviously not allowed to anyways. There's other isurim l'sesnim. There's all sorts of isurim why you're not allowed to place a stumbling block in front of someone that's going to trip on it. But why is that not included in this prohibition? That's what the Torah says. Yeah, what's going on with it? Why not? So I saw 2 basic pshatim. One of them actually from the Meral Diskin, a great such a geshmak pshat. I mean, every pshat in Torah is geshmak. The Gemara says you're not allowed to say one sugi is geshmak a sugi because every sugi in Torah is geshmak, and that's chavada. The Kliyaka and the Maral say the same thing, a fascinating thing. They say it says in the pasuk "Neiver l'siti michshol v'yareisa me'alekecha." You should not place a stumbling block in front of a blind person. V'yareisa me'alekecha, and you shall fear Hashem. Fear Hashem. What does it mean, fear Hashem? So anywhere we find generally in the Torah it says V'yareisa me'alekecha, Chazal tell us that it means that these are prohibitions that are moser l'leiv ha'adam. What does it mean moser l'leiv ha'adam? It's given over only to a person's heart, which means that you yourself cannot, meaning from the outside, you can't tell if a person's sinning or not sinning. You know that you're doing a sin. You know you shouldn't be doing this. It's a muscle of lev. If you're racing you got to fear Hashem. And as the Gemara tells us in Shragi and other places, that a person that's over an aver b'seisa, a person that transgresses a prohibition in private, and he says, "No one sees me. What's the problem?" Exactly. Hashem says, "He's deichik ragli ashchina." Deichik ragli ashchina. It's if he's been kaifer in Hashem. Why? Because in public, you're scared to sin. Why don't you sin in public? Because other people see you. What about when in private Hashem sees you too? Okay. Not then, not then. Well, that's a tremendous sin. That's a very bad thing. So when it says v'yareisim elakecha, it means you should be scared of Hashem. What it means you should fear Hashem and only Hashem, because no one else knows what you have in your mind. So it's a sin that's only you in your mind know that you're sinning, and that sin v'yareisim elakecha. So where does it come from? Either you put a stumbling block in front of a guy that's yareisim elakecha. You go down the street. You're walking down the street. Steve's watching. And you throw a brick in front of the guy. What's yareisim elakecha? Steve, what are you doing? That's not yareisim elakecha. Sometimes the blind person hears you. Says, "Well, what's that?" Some people know. So yareisim elakecha. Someone else is going to know. That's not yareisim elakecha. It's not private, right? Zakta kliyaka, or says the kliyaka, and Maral says both the same thing. It says yareisim elakecha. The Torah is teaching you that this pasuk is not the simple explanation, which means putting a stumbling block actually in front of someone. Rather, it means something which is masal aleiv. Only you know. What's that? Someone asks you for a piece of advice. No one knows what you have in mind. No one knows if you're telling him good or bad. He doesn't know. He's trusting you. That's yareisim elakecha. You think you're going to get away with telling a person bad advice? You have to fear Hashem. No one's going to realize Hashem knows what you're doing. That's one shot that they say. The question on this is that what would the 2 things we just said lift the aver includes? First of all, telling someone bad advice. What was the second thing? Helping someone do some sin. Right? Yareisim elakecha. Everybody knows the guy's not allowed to eat trade, huh? What do you mean? I mean, it's certainly very common that a person knows. No,
a guy. You give him a piece of meat. He thinks it's kosher. You know it's straight.
So he's saying only in a case. Only in a case that a person doesn't know.
Hashem knows what you're doing. This guy doesn't. No, he can't tell.
What about in a case where a person knows? Person knows. The Gemara says a case that a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine. You pass a Nazir a cup of wine. You're saying it's only in a case where he doesn't know. It's actually discussed in the place game if the guy doesn't know, if he's amazed, if he does it on purpose, Shragi. But it's clear according to many poskim that even if a person does know and he doesn't amaze it, he knows he's transgressing, and you pass him the piece of treif meat, you're still over lifnei iver. Why am I lifnei iver? He knows, I know, we all know. I'm enabling him to do the sin, but why should I be over? It's not Yerusim Elikecha. Everyone knows. It's very public what a person's doing, right? Or Lashon Hara. The Lashon Hara is a classic case of Yerusim Elikecha. Ribbis. It's brought down Ribbis is Yerusim Elikecha. A person that lends with interest or pays back with interest. It's lifnei iver because the borrower is causing the lender to sin. The lender is causing the borrower to sin. Right? What's lifnei iver? Everyone knows. Right? So it may be other prohibitions. Why is it lifnei iver? Lifnei iver means Yerusim Elikecha. Only something that's given to the heart of a person. So it's not so clear. It's not so easy to understand what they mean that it's dafka Yerusim Elikecha only in the heart of hearts. Okay, but that's a fine. The Maral Diskin says a fascinating thing, such a Gavalda Gazach. He says like this. He says there's two terminologies when it comes to putting something down or giving something over. There's what's called nesina, which literally means giving, and then sima, vayosem, lahosim, to put something. Okay? It says v'loisosim domim beveisecha. You shall not place a cause to spill blood in your home. That's one thing. You don't place a cause of something to spill blood. Lifnei iver loisitein michshoil. Don't. Sitein literally means to give. The word nesina always means give me yad liyad. I give my hand to your hand. I'm giving to you. Not I'm putting down, I'm giving to you. Zok the Maral Diskin. I'm not giving to you. If I put a stomach block down on the street in front of a blind person, I'm not giving him anything. I'm putting it down. That's not nesina. That's not lifnei iver loisitein michshol. That'd be lifnei iver loisosim michshol. Don't place down in front of him on the ground. Loisitein means to give him in his hand. You give him something. I didn't give him anything. So he says you have to translate the pasuk, and the simple translation of the pasuk means giving something from hand to hand. What's an example of giving something over from hand to hand? Giving bad advice. Between me and him, I'm giving him bad advice. Telling him to sin. It's between me and him. Dr. Marodiskin and Gavaldi said that's the taich of the pasuk. The actual translation of the pasuk doesn't mean to put it down. Maridik. This is it's beautiful, beautiful. The Mechas Chinuch brings. He asks a question. He says the only problem with this is at the Gemara in Yevamis on Avchav Dalet says that there's one case in the Torah, one case. You have to see the Gemara and know exactly what it means. But there's only one case, to the best of our knowledge, that the mikra is yoytze midei pshuta, which means that the pasuk itself doesn't mean what it's saying. It means something else. What about this? There's a perfect example. It says, don't put it down in front of the iver, right? So this is the case. Why do they bring this case? So according to Maral Diskin, it's not shver. According to Maral Diskin, it's not a problem. It's good. Why? Because it doesn't mean that. But according to the Maral and the Kliyaka that understand the reason why it doesn't mean not putting down a stomach block is because it's not muscle lave, because everyone knows about it, because I know about it, or other people know about it. So then it's difficult. You don't understand the Gemara. The Gemara says that there's one case that it doesn't say that the Torah is mikra yitzim de pshuta, that it's not, doesn't mean simple understanding what the Torah says. We have another case. Okay? Good? Clear? Fine. Very good. I just want to tell you one more very interesting thing. There's a halacha in damaging someone. There's something called a grumma. You know what a grumma is? You cause a damage, right? There's garmi. There's different levels of what would be a simple case of a person damaging a car. Give me a case. Story. Tell me a story. Any story. Damage something. Shouldn't be hard to figure out.
Put something, big boulder on the hill and let it roll down into the next car.
Is that okay? Hey, the case. Give me a case. A person goes and damages something. Come on, what you guys? They live in Philadelphia.
Time in neighborhoods.
Very good. Inner cities, slash tires, excellent. Right. Slash a tire. You walk up a tire, slash it, boom. Right. Now, let's say a person doesn't slash a tire, but a person, God forbid, puts a nail down in the street, and the guy's going to drive over it. Yeah? Are you chayiv for that?
No.
You're not chayiv. It's a grumma. That's called a grumma. It means you caused damage. You didn't actually damage with your own hands. Okay? That's called a grumma. Now there's a Ramah. The Ramah says a fascinating. It's brought down. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, the Yeshiva Baranabit Yeshiva, brings down Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. Just mention the word Rabbi Chanan. You have to know who Rabbi Chanan was. Rabbi Chanan was in safe land in America when the war broke out, or at the time that Malinowitz was getting overtaken, and he said, I want to go back. I'm in charge of these boys. They're my boys. I got to go back. And he went back into the war zone, and ultimately was killed with his yeshiva, because he has to be with his yeshiva. But Abu Chanan once came to the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim was Abu Chanan's. Everyone knows who Chavetz Chaim was, right? Chavetz Chaim was Abu Chanan's Rabbi. So he came to, he was Chanan's Rabbi. He came to the Chavetz Chaim, and he told him that he wants to go. His wife had a baby. He wants to go to the bris. He has to. It's his son. He has to go to the bris. So the Chavetz Chaim asked him, "You're a male? You know how to make a bris? What are you going for? You're sitting and learning." So we have no idea. We have no idea. We think it's more important to watch the ball game than to learn sometimes. But think about the ideas that the Chavetz Chaim was a very sane person. All right, not a radical, crazy. So these were the Chavetz Chaim. But think about it. Just think about what their level of learning was. It's contemplative. Anyways, getting back to Abu Chanan. So Abu Chanan brings this Ramah, and the Ramah says a fascinating thing, that Enechanami Groma is not usher maybe because of hezek, because of damaging someone, but it's usher why? You're putting nails in front of the guy's car. Yeah? Gewaldig Gazach. Okay? So the problem is, first of all, this doesn't stem with anything we just learned, right? Because it comes out according to the Ramah that this is not giving bad advice. This is not causing a person to sin. This is practical damage. This is a stumbling block in front of a blind person. So number one is you see the Ramah learned, not like the Rambam, not like the Chinuch, not like all these Rishonim that we're mentioning, and rather he learned that, and the Mehesh Chacham goes like this also, and these others that go like this also, that the prohibition of lifnei iver, of putting a stumbling block, is actual translation. It is not putting a stumbling block in front of another person. That's number one you see from the Ramah. You see from the Ramah another fascinating thing. Question. When does someone transgress the prohibition? If you learn that it means putting down a stumbling block in front of a person, right? When does a person transgress the prohibition? Does he transgress the prohibition when he puts it down, or when the person actually falls? Right. So when does he transgress? So.
Is it possible when you put the nails down that the guy doesn't drive over?
Right.
Or doesn't put a flat.
Right. So you have to think about that for a moment and think: Is it the fact that he put it down, or is it only the fact that the person got damaged? Because this is brought down in many svarim, exactly this question. So I saw in the Sefer, there's a Yid, Zilberstein in Eretz Yisrael, him or son, I don't know which one. He wants to say from this Ramah, you can prove from here that since the person is chayiv because of lifnei iver, and he's only chayiv on this grama, when on this damage, when the person actually pops his tire, obviously you're only transgressing the prohibition when you pop the tire. I don't know what he means. Maybe I transgressed the prohibition yesterday, but when the person does it, that's an actuality. I mean, I guess you don't need that to happen. Maybe it happened yesterday, but that's.
If the chiyuv comes once you set up the damage.
Set on your chayiv from yesterday.
And then I would explain why it says v'yirayzim Hashem la'kacha.
Why?
Because Hashem sees what you're doing, what you're planning.
I mean, you're planning it out. Even very good, very nice.
And that would be
very nice. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, you have to know. Very good, very good. You have to know. It's just an interesting thought process. It's an interesting thing to think about. There's one more thing that we're going to do about. First, I want to just discuss the concepts, that we have here with Iver. We spoke about a little bit about giving me some bad advice and how, to us, as some things, it's really a lesson, I think, for life. Very often you'll see something. I'm trying to remember there's this famous story. I forgot to start. There's some Rabbi in Europe. There's a whole story with it in Torah. Okay, I don't remember to say half the story, but the bottom line is that very often it happens. It doesn't happen to any of us, but it's other people that happens to. That you'll see something on the street, you see someone do something, you say, that's really horrible. That's terrible. How does a human being act? How does a human being act like that? But then when it comes to us, we're a little more lenient on ourselves. Okay, we have to try and realize that we have to judge ourselves. But the same litmus test, is that the word? Mm-hmm. That we judge other people. You see someone else doing it, don't fall into the trap of, by him it's a problem, by me it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. I was talking to someone today. The person has a store. A great person, not a bad guy, a great person. No, but he was complaining that people come into the store and they try bargaining with him. You bargain, come in, you say, he sold things for 10% off. He sold cards 10% off to be used the next day. And, I want to use it today. I'm sorry, we sold it for tomorrow. Let me use it today. Why can't I use it today? I don't know. That's what we did. He says, when was the last time you went to a pizza shop and asked the guy, could I have 10% off? I went to a bakery. You don't ask, right? What do you come to the store? I have 10%. What do you want from me? But when this guy goes and he's trying to make a sale of whatever, right? He has 10%, right? You do the same thing. But when you're on the other side of the aisle, you don't see the other side. You have to realize that sometimes you have to look at a picture and the whole picture and realize that, we do, the Sfarim tells us, heard this many times from many Rabbeim of mine, that when we come up to Shemayim, Hashem's not going to judge us necessarily only from what it says in the Torah. Hashem's going to judge us from ourselves. Then he's going to show us in ourselves, you tell me what happened. Why didn't you come to davening? Because I was too tired to wake up. What happened the morning of you had to travel to the Super Bowl? How'd you get up that day? I went to the bill earlier. Really, same time. And it's like that constantly. We live, unfortunately, lives of contradictions because we're pulled here and we're pulled there. Chavz always discusses that a person by nature is created with taivas. We're pulled one way, and then the Torah pulls us the other way. We have to try to straighten out our contradictions and realize. So when we're trying to advise people, you have to think in that framework of mind. That we have to realize that if we're not purely clean, then stay away from giving advice, even as much as hard it is for brilliant people like all of us to say no. I'm sorry, I can't advise you, but sometimes you have to just say that, or say that I'm the gebedavar. I'm a what's the word? I'm an involved party, and I can't really give independent advice. But I can, if you want to hear, I can tell you what I think. So that's one thing. Another thing is, very often it comes up that there are things that are contradictions between ourselves and our friend. For example, there's one sale. You're looking online. You want to buy tickets to go to Israel, and there's one ticket available on Priceline. There's one ticket available for $1,100. The next ticket's $1,200, and it's you and your friend. You're sitting in front. You have a credit card. You're buying a ticket for one person. Who do you buy it for?
Is there anything wrong with buying it for yourself?
Then so the pastor's nothing wrong by himself, right? I'm not saying there's something wrong. I'm not trying to say there's something wrong, but the point that I'm making is that we have to realize that when we're ingrained with this natural instinct to try to take care of ourselves, because Hashem made us like that. Because if not, there would be no kiyum of the world. The world wouldn't exist. Because if everyone's not trying to help themselves, so then what makes me move forward? Why should I wake up in the morning? Why should I try to make money? Why should I try to have children? Why should I try to give them, etc., etc., etc.? Hashem created the world that we should want to take care of ourselves in order that we can live, exist, reproduce, have children, and help the world. But ultimately, what's the world for? Why did Hashem create the world? Lehetiv, to give. Hashem created the world to give to us. Hashem doesn't need our blessings, doesn't need our davening, doesn't need our learning, doesn't need nothing, doesn't need us. I don't need you. Hashem, why does He do it? He wants to give us. Hashem created the world to give us, and Hashem created us in His image to be givers of others. When we are on this world, our obligation and our job and our very existence in this world is to give to the next person. That's why we're here. We're here to give to the next person, and we have to realize that. And it's with this foundation the whole Torah is based upon. I just want to tell you a story which is really not connected to this per se, but sometimes you have a different perspective of something and you think about it a little bit and you could think through that glass. Sometimes you think through the glass of, I realize that I'm really on this world to help the next person. I have a friend, his father passed away a few weeks ago. His father drove for 25 years. I never knew this. 25 years, I don't know, every single day, but majority of this. He lives in Borough Park. He lived in Borough Park. He traveled to Queens. And he would stop off in Manhattan, which is not on the way. I mean, it's a little. I mean, it's not like Lakewood to, It's a major detour. For 25 years, on the way to work and on the way home from work, he stopped in Sloan Kettering. He drove cancer patients or cancer families, whatever it was, from Borough Park, Sloan Kettering, and then he went to the Bronx. He came back home, picked whoever it was up, and went back to the thing. And you think, once in a while you're in the car, and I need to make a phone call, and I need to do this, and I have this to do, and I have that to do, and I have patients talk to someone, I start hearing that Taurus, and I'm going to have to wait for them, and then, they're going to have to, 1 second, I forgot upstairs my tefillin, and I'm on the way home from work, it's a long day, I want to go home, right? But when a person realizes, you look at it from the perspective that we're on this world to help others, sometimes you can change that perspective, and you can focus on that and think about that a little bit, and it helps you do really for others. I'm going to tell you this story about perspectives. It's such a great story. The last bus from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim on Chol Hamoed, on Sukkot, is bus number 402. I'm just throwing out examples, which leaves at 2:30. This example, let's say, for argument's sake, okay? It comes, it's 2:30 in the morning, the last stop in Bnei Brak, and there's 40 people sitting outside, men, ladies, children sitting outside waiting for the bus. And it comes 2:30, 2:35, 2:40, the bus is not showing up. There's 40 people waiting there outside, very late, up the creek. What are you going to do? Finally, at 2:45, 2:50, a bus pulls up, bus number 309. 309. I open the door, and they say, anyone going to Tveria? Like, no, we're all going to Yerushalayim. Okay, close the door. You're in Israel. 1 second, where's the bus? I'm really sorry. I'm going to Tveria. But we need to go to Yerushalayim. Okay, go to Yerushalayim. Wait for me. Back, forth. They said, listen, you have an empty bus. Why are you going? I'm going to Tveria. I'm going home. That's my job. I'm going to Tveria. Take us to Yerushalayim. No, I'm losing my job. Back in myself, of course, and as Israelis prevail. And before he knows it, the bus is full of passengers, and they're passed up, and they're going to Yerushalayim. 309 going to Yerushalayim. So they're on the road, and someone asks, sir, you told us you're going to lose your job. You're right. You're a nice guy. Why did you take us? Like, what is it that we said that turned you on? I'll tell you a story. Good Israeli says a story. We're sitting in the bus station in Bnei Brak, and it's 2:25. And we get a phone call from bus number 402. And the guy says, listen, here's a chayin. I'm stuck. My bus broke down. Whatever happened, I can't come. I'm not going to make it. Could someone take my route? And everyone's saying, but we're going to leave the bus station now. We're going to get to the bus stop first, 2:45, 2:50. We're going to get egged. We're going to get tomatoes thrown on us. Everyone's going to be, it's the middle of the night. What are you coming late to this? Yeah. I'm not doing it. Why should I take this bus? It's not my job. You take it. No one wants to take it. Finally, one guy said, listen, here's the chaim. I'm going to go. But one tonight. My bus is saying 309. I'm going to Tveria. I'll be the biggest tzaddik in the world, and then I'm going to Yerushalayim. Instead of cursing him out, they're giving him brachas to the biggest, nicest guy in the world. Had he said 402, I'm going to Yerushalayim, they would have cursed him out. You're late. It's all about how you look at something. That's what it's all about. The Rebbe should help us. We should guard ourselves. We should only look to help a fellow yid. We should be mitzvah in everything we do, and help everyone mitzvah whatever they do. Zay matzliach, kol tov. Thank you for joining. It's been real.